Stories that matter. The journey of life from birth to death is an extraordinary trip, sometimes filled with great joy and excitement, but at other times filled with pain, sorrow, and disappointment. Stories That Matter shares both extremes with you. Sometimes our stories will make you feel very happy, but the journey of life is not all happiness. Other times, the journey of life will make you feel sad, for all of us have experienced both extremes. Stories That Matter will begin right after the break with a story that will touch your heart in the journey of life.
Welcome to Stories That Matter. I am your host, Doug Thompson, with my special guest, Danielle Underwood, Kansans for Life. Danielle, first off, thank you so much for being here. And I'm looking behind your right shoulder, and it says, Value Them Both Amendment. What's that mean?
Oh, the Value Them Both Amendment is the most important vote for Kansans in at least a generation, if not longer. The Value Them Both Amendment will be on our ballots August 2nd. And I know you've already been informing your viewers about this very important vote, that the people of Kansas will be able to share their opinion about what we need to do as a state, how we need to step up and make sure we're protecting both women and babies in our borders here.
Okay, and so when we talk about value them both, are we talking about moms and babies?
You bet we are.
Yeah.
100% yes. We're talking about, we're talking about protecting our existing common sense laws that for the last 20 years, Kansans have been working together diligently to pass. And those are protections for both women and babies. We're talking about protections, making sure that women are given information, that nothing is withheld from them as they are considering very life-changing decisions. They need to have access to real factual information about gestational development of that baby, about risks to their own bodies. Very basic protections that we have that were put in place by reasonable Kansans who came together and broadly supported these things. And, in 2019, a radical state court decided that they would hand out a ruling that would radically change the understanding of our Constitution. And with that ruling, all of our existing pro-life laws were immediately presumed unconstitutional. It's shocking what happened, but it's reality. And Kansans had one remedy to fix this situation, and it's to pass the Value Them Both Amendment. So thankfully, we had a wonderful group of very committed pro-life Kansans who came together, great, very bright legal minds who came together and decided what we needed to do to directly counteract this decision that our very liberal, left-leaning, unelected state Supreme Court hoisted upon Kansas in 2019. And so that's what we're doing. We've got to take this moment and seize it. This is our one opportunity to fix the dreadful situation in which we've become truly a destination state for abortion in the Midwest.
And why is that? What's happened that's caused Kansas to become the central place for abortions in certainly the central part of the United States? What's caused that?
Yes. It's sad and it's shocking, but this was an intentional strategy of the abortion industry to form what they call haven states. So in a similar way that they have created California and New York to be haven states for abortion, they found that while we had a very strong pro-life legislature, we had a very weak court system in our state Supreme Court. And so they used that as their opportunity to create this brand new understanding in our 1859 Constitution, where they said that there was this natural right to abortion that somehow was right there in the preamble and in our, the very understanding of our life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That terminology somehow gave an unlimited right to abortion. And that made it almost impossible to place even the most basic regulations, even the most basic of restrictions on this abortion industry. All of a sudden, the people of Kansas had absolutely no power to have any kind of voice in what we wanted to see happen in our state. And so where we had neighboring states that were able to regulate the abortion industry in their states in stronger ways, we had absolutely no way to do that. And instead, the abortion industry realized that they would start funneling women here across our state borders. Here we are, I-35, I-70, these two major thoroughfares crisscrossing our state. And that would be the way that they would send women to Kansas, that they would want to expand abortion facilities here. They would want to expand the physical size of abortion facilities, hire massive numbers of staff, and even potentially open abortion facilities in towns and cities across Kansas that had never had them before. So it was a drastic change, and it was intentional. And this is really our one chance. We must pass the Value Them Both on August 2nd. And so Kansans need to know that yes is the pro-life vote. As we either vote early, we have very good, strong election laws here in our state. We can vote early, or we can go to the polls on August 2nd. But every pro-life voter must vote in this election. Do not sit this one out.
Yeah, you're right. This is a very, very important election coming up. We're going to cut away, take a break. You're watching Stories That Matter. We'll be right back.
The Kansas Supreme Court recently ruled that the Kansas Constitution contains a nearly unlimited right to abortion. Since this ruling, abortions increased by nearly 10% in Kansas. We are becoming a haven in the United States for unrestricted, unlimited abortion up until the moment of birth. To stop the abortion industry from using this ruling to overturn every restriction on abortion in Kansas, state lawmakers placed a state constitutional amendment on your ballot. By voting yes on the Value Them Both amendment, you will be protecting current Kansas law, which stops taxpayer funding of abortion, partial birth, late-term, and even dismemberment abortion. Unlimited and unrestricted abortion doesn't belong in Kansas. Value Them Both protects women, preborn babies, and our current laws. On August 2nd, 2022, vote with both moms and babies. Vote yes on Value Them Both. To learn more, visit valuethemboth.com.
BDS Productions is a family-owned company working hard to bring quality programming to viewers worldwide. BDS owns and produces multiple television shows. BDS also developed the live theater production Hillbilly Hotspot, featuring the original music of Darlene Austin of Nashville. BDS wrote, filmed, and distributed the faith-based movie Can We Talk, and distributes Branson Country USA and the TV special We Are Branson USA. Thanks for your support, and may God continue to bless you. Welcome back to Stories That Matter. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with my special guest, Danielle Underwood of the Kansans for Life. And we're talking about Value Them Both amendments that's coming up on August the 2nd. It's going to be on the ballot across the state of Kansas, and it is extremely important because not only has Kansas put itself in the posture that there may be many coming from out of the state of Kansas coming in for abortions, but as I recall from a look at the material you sent to me, Kansans would be paying for those abortions for people coming in from out of state. Would that be correct?
That is definitely a very real possibility. As I mentioned before, we've seen how the abortion industry is using states like California and New York to kind of be the precursor to what they want to bring here to Kansas. And in those states, so in the state of California, they are right now trying to implement taxpayer funding of abortion, not just for the procedures, but for the woman's travel to the state, and even for possibly giving her money for childcare, for other children in the home. I mean, things that we just can't even imagine. Hotel stays that the taxpayers of that state would have to fund in order to truly financially support the abortion industry. Mm-hmm. So we know that that's one of the things that the HODI's decision did actually specifically speak about, was taxpayer funding, and whether that would be presumed unconstitutional. So we fully assume that if we don't pass the Value Them Both amendment, that is one of the things we will lose. Because right now we have a ban on state tax dollars being used to directly fund abortions. And that would be in extreme jeopardy, and probably one of the first laws that would be sued next in order to bring it down because of that ruling.
Okay. And as I mentioned before, I'm looking over your right shoulder to value them both amendments. What's our Bible say? What does it say about abortions? What's the language in the Bible?
Well, the word abortion never appears in the Bible that I'm aware of, but we know that God is the author of life. And we know that every child and every woman is extremely precious in his sight. Every family is extremely precious in his sight. And that we need to do all we can to protect the lives that are here in the state, and also to protect women who might travel here. I mean, there are some very basic laws that we are trying to protect through this extreme level of effort we're going to get the word out across Kansas to all Kansans about what we're truly voting on. And we have to understand that by doing this, we're protecting those existing laws that are so common sense and so reasonable. Things like the ban on taxpayer funding, things like protecting our minor girls. I mean, can we all agree that there should never be a 14-year-old girl dropped off at an abortion clinic without her parents ever knowing? I mean, that idea is just abhorrent to me. And I know it is to almost all Kansans, except for the most rabidly pro-abortion people among us. And there are a few, but we know that people want to protect those parental rights to be involved in these major decisions in their young daughters' lives. Things like we had a live dismemberment ban in place that was protecting preborn babies from literally being torn from limb. And that's one of those things. That actually set this whole process in motion. That was the first law that was sued. And that's the reason that when that ruling came down from our state Supreme Court, that was the moment they decided to remove all legal underpinnings for our laws, so that they would all become presumed unconstitutional. That it will literally just take, a few dollars and a lawyer to sue every one of our existing laws and have all of them overturned unless we pass the value them both amendment, which specifically redirects the understanding of the Constitution. It makes it very clear what Kansans believe about the people's right to have a voice in this discussion.
And my own feeling about it is, of course, that life begins at conception, and not at birth, but at conception. Have you ever seen a partial birth abortion? I'm sure you have. A video of it, anyway.
Yeah, I've only seen, we've seen these graphic interpretations of it. I think if we saw the reality of it, we would be just completely shocked. And I think recovering from having witnessed that would be very, very difficult. But we know even those live dismemberment abortions that are currently happening in our state are just as atrocious to us, just as sickening, that these poor babies are being attacked in the womb. And so we know that since that Hodes ruling, that the number of live dismemberment abortions has increased by 17%, that these late-term abortions will return to Kansas, that they're already returning, and that number will exponentially increase if we don't pass the value them both amendment. This is our one chance to make it happen. And we need to make sure that we need to know that failure is not an option, that Kansans need to unite behind this and make sure that we're all talking to our family, our friends, and help them understand that this is the path forward for us. This is the only path forward to have a Kansas that will continue to try to protect women and babies.
Do you have a number of abortions? They know a number of abortions that occur in Kansas right now. If we looked at last year, how many abortions would have taken place? Is that known within reason?
Yes.
How many?
The Kansas Department of Health and Environment puts out a report every year, and we've been tracking that every year for decades. We know that we've had a 13% increase in the overall annual number of abortions since that Hodes ruling in 2019. So the exact number is somewhere, last year we had a continued increase, and that number is somewhere in the range of 7,800. So we have this steep incline. For the past 20 years, we had been steadily reducing the annual number of abortions in our state. And that was because of two things. First of all, Kansans had come together to really link arms and provide resources for women. We made sure that a woman who was facing an unexpected pregnancy had access to financial help, emotional help, medical help. And we have over 50 pregnancy care centers that have popped up across Kansas. These communities that have brought in medical providers in their communities and all kinds of financial resources down to the most basic of things. And they walk with these women, not just for the birth, but even up to 3 years post that baby's birth, to continue to help her, to continue to provide financial education, all kinds of wonderful resources that we provide. So that was one part of that reduction. And the other part was the over 20 life-saving laws that we were able to pass to make sure that women had access to information, that they could see the sonogram images, the ultrasound images as they were contemplating this decision, that they had access to information about the risks to their own bodies. That's something we call informed consent. And, I don't know anyone who would go in and have a medical procedure without being given full information about the risks to our bodies. But yet that's what women came and testified in our legislature, saying, I was denied access to real information about this. I was told that this was a clump of cells. I was told that there were no real long-term risks, and I didn't need to worry about that decision. And so these laws were all passed for good reasons. We had that clinic sanitation and safety standards law that was passed as a direct result of a horrifying clinic that was legally operating in Kansas City, Kansas, that had to be shut down. But it took 2 years to do that because we didn't have any laws on the books that they could use to enforce that. That is the kind of situation we want to never have happen in Kansas again. And that's why we need to be able to protect these existing laws that literally took years and hundreds and thousands of people stepping forward and really demanding of the legislators to put these laws into place. And to have that taken from our hands as the people of Kansas, by these unelected liberal judges in our Kansas Supreme Court is beyond what most of us would assume would ever happen in this state. So we've got to rectify the situation, and that's how we're going to do it.
Well, amen to that. We're going to cut away, take a break. You're watching Stories That Matter. We'll be right back.
Why does Kansas need the Value Them Both Amendment? In 2019, the Kansas Supreme Court ruled that the Kansas Constitution contains a nearly unlimited right to abortion. This ruling endangers all common sense limits on the abortion industry in Kansas, including bans on taxpayer-funded abortions, limits on partial birth and late-term abortion, parental consent requirements for minors, even the mother's right to know about her own health risks. While Value Them Both won't stop all abortions, it does allow elected officials to pass common sense limits on the abortion industry, just as they have for over 25 years. Value Them Both protects women and preborn babies from an unregulated abortion industry. It also restores your voice and ensures that our current laws aren't overturned. On August 2nd, 2022, vote with moms and babies. Vote for Value Them Both. To learn more, visit valuethemboth.com.
Jesus said, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and soul and strength and mind, and thy neighbor as thyself." Who is your neighbor? Everyone is our neighbor that lives on this little planet. The Bible says, "For God so loved the world." Come to the cross, find forgiveness. Then you have the ability and then you have the vision to go out and help your neighbor.
Welcome to Stories That Matter. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with my special guest, Danielle Underwood of the Kansans for Life, and we're talking about Value Them Both Amendment that's coming up on August the 2nd. And Danielle, make a guess with me if you can. Maybe you have more than a guess, but if Kansas is unsuccessful, if this goes to vote and the vote comes up no instead of yes. What are the projections for how many abortions would take place in a calendar year in Kansas? Do you have that research or an educated guess?
I do, and it's you're not going to like it. It's so we know, if you are familiar with an organization called the Guttmacher Institute, it is essentially the research arm of Planned Parenthood. It is the pro-abortion, very activism-driven arm, but they do extensive research, and they have actually given us their projections. Essentially, what will happen if other states around us are able to strengthen their laws and we are left defenseless, then we could see as much as a 1,300% increase in the number of women whose closest clinic would be in our state. So if you want to do the translation on what they're saying there, that means that those are the women they would be sending to Kansas across our borders. And in some cases, they would be fundraising to send those women here, just specifically to obtain abortions in the state of Kansas. So a 1,300% increase. When you do the math on that, we're just going to give a little bit of wiggle room. Like I said before, we had roughly 7,800 that happened here last year. But if that scenario plays out and we do not pass the Value Them Both Amendment, we could see more than 50,000 abortions happening here on an annual basis. And that's why we can see we can't even wait a year. You know, if anyone wants to say or think, well, maybe we should just try this again in a year, or, try to do this a different way, that is not an option. When you think about the staggering numbers of babies who would lose their lives and mothers whose futures would be altered permanently from that situation, we don't have any time to waste. And so thankfully, before things started happening at the federal level with decisions coming down from the US Supreme Court, all these things that are in motion now, thankfully, our legislators were on the ball in the very beginning. And they realized, the pro-life movement realized when that bombshell dropped from the Kansas Supreme Court in 2019, that we had to act immediately. And it took a couple tries to get that through the supermajority that was needed to get it onto voters' ballots. But they were able to do that in 2020, the very beginning of 2020. And now here we are, 2021. Sorry, I had that wrong. 2020 was the first try. 2021, they were successful. And now we'll have it on our ballots August 2nd of this year.
Is there opposition that are pro abortion that are spending significant money trying to make this go the opposite way of what you are with the Value Them Both Amendment?
So we know from similar states that have done similar efforts to what we're trying to do. So we'll give an example. The last state that needed to try to pass an amendment to do this kind of effort, every single Planned Parenthood in the nation ended up pouring money into the state, into the coffers of that effort. I don't think we've ever seen what we're going to see in the next few months. All eyes, as soon as that Dobbs decision comes down from the US Supreme Court, all eyes in the nation will turn to Kansas. We've been saying Kansans for Life, my organization, and we're just one of 3 organizations that have joined forces to lead this effort to unite all pro-life Kansans. We're doing this in collaboration with the Kansas Catholic Conference and Kansas Family Voice, just to make sure I mentioned them. But we've been saying that, we expect that there will be absolute money pouring across our borders from all kinds of big name donors. And I'm sure you can think of some names and I can think of some names. Who's going to be sending money here? We've already seen commitments of money from the pro-abortion side, what they're pouring into midterm elections. And we know that they've specifically mentioned Kansas as a top priority. I think we're going to see staggering amounts of money pouring into air campaigns, and they're going to come in and create a campaign of confusion. First of all, one of the things that they're saying is that this is a ban on abortion. And we need to be clear and make sure that people understand the Value Them Both Amendment does not ban abortion. It cannot stop all abortions from happening. So what we're voting on is to make sure that we can reclaim and restore our Constitution to the way it was before that 2019 ruling, and that we restore our ability to protect our existing life-saving laws, those very common sense protections we had, and we restore the voice of the people to speak through our elected officials and to be able to put limits, to be able to put regulations, to be able to put parameters on what can happen here. So if you look at the language of the amendment, it's very neutral in its wording, and it's specifically to counteract and to correct that activist state court decision and where it brought us to today.
All right. Okay. Thank you. We're going to cut away, take a break. We'll be right back.
The Kansas Supreme Court recently ruled that the Kansas Constitution contains a nearly unlimited right to abortion. Since this ruling, abortions increased by nearly 10% in Kansas. We are becoming a haven in the United States for unrestricted, unlimited abortion up until the moment of birth. To stop the abortion industry from using this ruling to overturn every restriction on abortion in Kansas, state lawmakers placed a state constitutional amendment on your ballot. By voting yes on the Value Them Both amendment, you will be protecting current Kansas law, which stops taxpayer funding of abortion, partial birth, late-term, and even dismemberment abortion. Unlimited and unrestricted abortion doesn't belong in Kansas. Value Them Both protects women, preborn babies, and our current laws. On August 2nd, 2022, vote with both moms and babies. Vote yes on Value Them Both. To learn more, visit valuethemboth.com.
Welcome back to Stories That Matter. I'm Doug Thompson with my guest Danielle Underwood, Kansans for Life, and we are talking about the upcoming election on August the 2nd, and it is a very, very important election, and it pertains to Value Them Both Amendment. If you've been listening to this show, then you know exactly what we're talking about. It's one of the most important decisions that Kansas has made in a long, long time, because this one will have permanent effects. And, you can listen to this and common sense is going to tell you, and good Lord's going to protect us. Danielle, thank you so much for being with us. God bless you.
Thank you.